Hey everyone, What If Fan here, bringing you another exciting part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. You can find the fanfic title and the original author's name on my Patreon page. Make sure to check it out and show them some love. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell so you never miss an upload. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. Alright, let's jump into it. Chapter 291, The discussion in Konoha begins. Third-person POV. Uzumaki Clan, Year 42. The group of Uzumakis with Minato arrived in Konoha in the morning. Minato discussed with them for only a few minutes, along with the Senju clan, before using one of the houses damaged by yesterday's battle, deciding to rest a bit in the room with Makoto. However, he needed to sleep a few hours with Kushina, who also didn't miss the opportunity to finally share the futon with her fiancé. By the next morning, the village was still bustling, and quickly, everyone already knew what was going on. The elders, at least Hamura Mitokado and Kohara Udatane, were trying to influence public opinion, putting their agents to work among the civilians, although they didn't have the same success with the ninjas, who treated the situation with suspicion and held many opinions that were far from favorable to them, while the elders' allies felt somewhat embarrassed to join the ninja groups. Also, the detained root ninjas were brought for a public trial. Lord Nara, along with Minato and the Uzumaki clan, was present conducting that trial for everyone, while Mu Uzumaki represented the group. Hiruzen didn't seem very shocked by their presence, but the other elders clearly didn't like it. The evidence, however, had not yet begun to be discussed. Orochimaru also entered the village at that moment, avoiding Minato, and confirmed to everyone, when he went to the Hokage, that Minato had indeed killed the Kazekage in the attack. The village of Sunagakure was not at all happy about this, cursing them and even sending every type of ninja possible wanting to kill Orochimaru. He had to flee when all the outraged people from Suna were after him for revenge, after the murder Minato had committed. It was quite a strange thing. At one moment, he was fighting alongside them trying to defeat Minato, at the next, he was trying to flee from those who now wanted to kill him. Minato had left him there alone after the chaos started, on purpose. The evidence continued to be discussed, while some root ninjas began to speak publicly without Danzo's restrictions, in more open places for everyone as the evidence was taken from scrolls. They reported kidnappings, assassinations, bribes, threats, and even schemes to provoke one enemy against another, using the root ninjas themselves to cause chaos. Unsurprisingly, the reports revealed how they had killed Uzumakis and placed the blame on suspects from the village of the Mist to avoid leaving evidence against Danzo's activities. Naturally, the Uzumakis didn't like hearing about that at all and began openly insulting a dead Danzo and his administration, something no one could really blame them for. In any case, Danzo's research was also discussed. The main ones involved, besides trying to gain the power of certain bloodlines, as shown, even capturing and killing ninjas within the village itself to conduct studies. The experiments with Mokuton and the Sharingan were the most shocking, which greatly outraged both the Senju ninjas, who had great respect for Hashirama, and the Uchiha, who were disgusted, saying they were stealing the Sharingan and desecrating the clan. The Red-Eyed clan did not fail to openly insult all the elders for this, and Hiruzen now had the entire police force against him. Danzo was becoming more and more hated by the village, to the point that the Jonin began to complain that Minato had killed him, as many of them had wanted to do exactly that. The extent of the Roots' activities being revealed was quite intense, and now it even involved children being used as test subjects. Most died. Some, if they had any potential, were placed into secret root training, and others, if they didn't join, were simply abandoned, provided their memories were erased. For those who wouldn't survive, a grave or even burning them was enough for a man like Danzo. Minato paid close attention and took part in all the evidence. And upon hearing about the children, there was someone he needed to visit. None other than Yamato, who was the same age as Kakashi and should have been in some orphanage, since he shouldn't have even attended the academy. Yamato had gone through Danzo's experiments and had been discarded, placed in an orphanage, even though he was a little too old for the academy. Minato knew that something explosive was bound to come from Yamato before Danzo appeared in front of him, curious and with eyes full of malice and satisfaction at seeing a child using Mokuton. which meant that problem had once again been rediscovered by Danzo, who was fascinated to see the powers of the first Hokage. Danzo must have believed he had created Yamato, but he was wrong. Mokuton needed something that neither Danzo nor Orochimaru ever understood, the life element. It was a shame that, for Danzo of that future, Yamato had never had that much power in the original work, but there were also various factors as to why the boy wasn't powerful, since he didn't even have what the body of a member of the Senju clan could offer. In any case, it was an entire day of discussions, as all kinds of ninjas began to truly see the darkness of the village, one that most ninjas didn't know, and were certainly horrified. The Hokage was facing the gaze of the entire village and only closed his eyes and sighed, with looks full of anger and accusation against him and his companions over the last few years. It was at this moment that Hiruzen began to regret having let Danzo act as he had. He should never have given him so much freedom to create his projects and ended up contradicting his own words about protecting lives. But now it was too late, he was already involved enough that no one would really believe him. Things would not be easy for him. He didn't know how much time he had left as Hokage, but the village practically already wanted him to step down for someone else to take over. Some schemes were also revealed regarding the profits of all the elders and their associates, while missions that would give them a lot of money had been disproportionately given to a select group of people, and benefits within the elders' clans began to surface, favoring mainly the Sarutobi and Shimura clans. This resulted in even more anger from the village itself. And, at the same time, despite the anger Konoha felt toward the elders, one could sense caution within the village regarding the Uzumaki clan and helping them. There was an important decision to be made, and Minato was disappointed to see how a little more than half of Konoha was leaning. They didn't seem very willing to trade the idea of peace for trying to save a clan, when they could still have the chance to no longer see their loved ones dying, as had happened in the Second War. The memories and terrors of the Second War were still quite fresh in their minds, and they didn't want to return to war, since it had ended so recently. There was also a problem with Hiruzen's leadership over Konoha, as he didn't want the war to return when the village was so vulnerable. At least half of the opinion among the ninjas was divided, while among the civilians it was more difficult. About 89% of them seemed to accept the Uzumaki's fate, which was quite frustrating for any red-haired ninja there, seeing the village root for their death just to avoid returning to war. In any case, Minato was quite active, still speaking with the clan leader and arranging meetings with other smaller clans that he had begun to meet now in public areas. In the original story, these smaller clans were so tiny and few in number, with only a handful of members without anything extraordinary, that they hadn't even been mentioned in the original work. While the conversations continued with Minato and his group, the children at the academy were also curious about what was happening in the village. As they approached the debate area, two of these children formed a rather curious and peculiar duo, which Minato could see approaching while he was talking and exchanging ideas with other ninjas. Obito was curious. Things had been upside down since yesterday, when everyone saw the village's ninjas suddenly start moving from the clan toward the center of the village. He had been with his grandmother when he saw the Uchiha clan suddenly rush out, all dressed in battle clothes. He didn't understand, and his grandmother also had no answer. He still tried to figure it out, when he began to hear explosions and sought answers from the people who stayed behind, mainly the wives of the ninjas who were fighting at that moment. Even though he was considered a member of the clan while running through it yesterday, no one gave him much information. He had some difficulty finding out what was happening, as most who had remained in the clan didn't give him any importance. But eventually, he managed to get information from a Uchiha housewife and learned what was going on, that the Uchihas had allied with other clans to pressure the Hokage in some way. Obito heard the discussion as soon as it started between Minato and Hiruzen, from a distance, and couldn't help but be surprised and confused. It was all too complicated for a child to process and understand, and he left with the others when it ended. The next day, when the academy was cancelled, he dragged Rin along to understand better, as it was all consuming him. "Look, isn't that the ninja we saw in front of the academy?" "They say he's a hero," Obito commented, in tone, upon seeing Minato debating in a circle with older ninjas, remembering him being praised by their teacher. From time to time, there was always some girl with Minato, informing him of something, accompanying him for a while, and then disappearing. "That guy. He's just like Kakashi, popular with the women," was Obito's first frustrated thought. But he didn't care much about that and approached carefully, listening to the open conversation about what was happening. This is terrible, the Hokage sold out a clan, that Uzumaki clan, to the other villages. Why would they let that happen? Rin said, outraged. Rin seemed touched by what was happening. She had a kind soul and certainly it seemed wrong to her to sacrifice innocent people in pursuit of peace. At the same time, she saw that Minato defended the idea that, if necessary, he would protect the Uzumaki however needed. This made the girl cast a look of admiration toward the older boy. Don't worry. If you ask, I can go there and protect them, Obito said beside her, flashing an arrogant smile, wanting to be the girl's hero. Rin just laughed and shook her head, knowing he was talking nonsense, but finding it cute. Of course, Obito. I'm sure you'll be a great hero, she said, smiling. You really think so? He asked, incredulous. Of course, Obito. You'll be a great hero, Rin repeated, while he laughed, surprised by the answer. Obito would have been happier if the mood hadn't been ruined when he looked toward one of the buildings and spotted someone who immediately soured his mood. Kakashi was there, at a distance, also listening to what Minato was discussing with the other clan leaders, interested in approaching to hear the debate. Kakashi! Obito muttered angrily. Minato might have even noticed the strange relationship among the three children, but he didn't care about the idea of one teenager being jealous of another. That didn't matter now, while at the same time, as the future leader of that team, he would probably also find a way to deal with Obito's petty jealousy. Chapter 292, The Village's Decision 01. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. The sentence about Danzo was given the next day, and he was incriminated for all of his crimes. Minato did not receive any retaliation for having executed him before the sentence, which was quite expected, since people were more grateful that Danzo had been eliminated along with a large part of his elders. Some members of Root still seemed quite loyal, while others ended up telling everything they knew during the trial, no longer having any restriction from the seal that Danzo had placed on them. They began reporting every possible crime. Since it was no longer necessary, they still needed to hear all the witnesses. Many members of Root were imprisoned in Konoha's prisons, even for treason, due to the severity of the crimes they had committed in Danzo's service, besides the fact that they themselves felt no remorse and remained loyal to Danzo. The village could not let these ninjas remain free. Danzo's burial took place on the same day, and only the family and elders attended, while many of his former allies no longer wanted to associate themselves with his figure. The elders also did not go unpunished, as they faced retaliation in the village, while the very ninjas demanded that they at least step down from their positions until they received a greater sentence. And so it happened. They could only watch their influence being restricted in the village, while Hiruzen would still continue as Hokage, for he needed to fulfill his role and take care of the village with his experience as a leader. The majority of the village agreed to keep him until the Uzumaki crisis ended. At the same time, a note of clarification was also issued regarding Tsukumo Hatake. While the damage from losing the mission he failed was much smaller than portrayed, while the same members who had accused him, after being saved, no longer appeared in public, ashamed when it was discovered that they had been ordered by the elders to act that way, as well as many in the village spreading negative rumors about the Hatake. Thus, the ones who sat in the room to discuss matters of the village were none other than the Hokage, Lord Nara, Lord Uchiha, and Minato as Lord Namikaze, along with Lord Hatake, who officially returned as a ninja after the clarifications about his mission. None of the clans who fought against them were summoned as representatives, while the village returned to supporting those who fought against the elders' crimes, and the clans that were with the Hokage mostly felt ashamed. They were involved with the administration of the village on the second day, while making some decisions. Regardless of the outcome, I hope everyone accepts the decision of the village, Hiruzen emphasized as they reached the end of the meeting, looking directly at Minato, who was on the other side, while Mizu Uchiha, Shiran Nara, and Tsukumo Hatake also shared the clean table to give a final decision. Yes, I agree with that, and we all do the same, said Minato in a calm tone. Hiruzen had left the decision to a popular plebiscite among the village. Now it was no longer in the hands of anyone there, and they would have to respect the people's decision. Tsukumo Hatake looked at Minato for a few seconds. He seemed thoughtful about some things, but did not say much about it, remaining silent. Well, with that we conclude our meeting here. Now we will have to wait for the decision of the village's ninjas, as well as its citizens, Hiruzen said, and everyone agreed. Another thing Hiruzen played well was including the civilian population in the vote. Although their weight was smaller, it still carried more influence in the decision against the Uzumaki. Minato, a voice sounded behind the blonde as he left the Hokage's building. Turning around, he saw Tsukumo approaching. Minato, you seem to be planning something, aren't you? Tsukumo asked with narrowed eyes, knowing very well the boy who had been his student in Kenjutsu. When Minato was too calm, he seemed to be in control, even when his entire plan was falling apart, just like now, when the village was about to vote against everything he had planned. Surprisingly, Minato just offered a smile. This is the village's decision. I'm disappointed, yes, but there's nothing to be done. The war will still come anyway, and it would be good to have someone here who can command our ninjas. Hiruzen is more suited to be Hokage, so the village needs to be protected, and there's no one better than you for that at this moment. Minato said, continuing with his friendly smile, while Tsukumo raised an eyebrow. What are you talking about? He asked cautiously, as Minato simply vanished in front of him. He appeared in a square, on the other side of the village, where Tsunade was standing with her typical green cloak, waiting with her arms crossed. You finally came, she murmured to Minato, offering a smile. Well, let's go. We have no time to lose, he said, jumping onto a building, and Tsunade followed right behind. When they arrived at an orphanage on that side of the village, there were children playing here and there. They entered through the gate calmly. It wasn't the orphanage where Minato had lived, since that one was in another part of the village. However, they were there because of one child in particular. A woman who supervised the children playing noticed the two approaching. Who are you? How can I help you? She asked, while the children looked on curiously. The woman did not recognize them immediately, which was good. We are here to see a child named Yamato, Minato said. The woman raised an eyebrow. Yamato? That boy, wait, you're Minato Namikaze, and you're Princess Senju, granddaughter of the first Hokage. The middle-aged woman finally identified them, as they were quite famous in the village at that moment. Minato simply nodded. Tsunade offered nothing more than a look of acknowledgement. The children were stunned and quickly began to gather around, but the woman was faster, stopping them from disturbing the two figures. Turning back to them, she said, Well, why don't you follow me? I'll take you to young Yamato. The woman spoke quickly, seeing the chaos that was about to unfold. Minato waved to the children and followed. Minato and Tsunade entered the orphanage, and the sound of the children was muffled by the closed door. They approached a small library, where some children were reading mainly comics and children's stories, judging by the covers. However, there was a boy reading something more theoretical. He looked exactly like Yamato. The boy looked up, surprised, when he saw one of the orphanage organizers and those two people. Is it him? Tsunade asked, trying to sense the boy's chakra, but it was too weak. He had certainly not awakened his chakra or trained it. Yes, he hasn't fully released his chakra yet, but I'm sure it's him, Minato said, offering a smile, while both the woman and the boy looked strangely at his words. Tell me, boy, have you tried to enter the ninja academy? Minato asked, approaching him. The boy seemed a little surprised by the approach, before lowering his eyes to the ground. No. I couldn't pass. I failed, he murmured, full of shame. With a slight nod, Minato knew that at some point Danzo would discover him, since he had personally trained him. But Minato did not know exactly when. Probably, the boy might have released his chakra a little later or perhaps accidentally made a tree grow. Root's spies would have seen it, linking it to the fact that he was a discarded test subject. At the same time, this also pointed to the fact that Orochimaru was already experimenting on children, since Yamato had undergone those experiments. I see. My name is Minato Namikaze, Minato said, opening a smile, while the boy looked a little surprised, turning his gaze to him. He recognized the name immediately, since Minato was quite famous lately, being talked about as the leader of part of the village against the Hokage, in the search for a decision on whether or not to go to war. The children did not understand it very well, but they knew that the blonde in front of them was incredible and respected in the village. "What do you want with me?" the boy murmured, embarrassed. He didn't know why someone like Minato would be after him. "It's very simple. I see potential in you," Minato stated easily, while the boy was left speechless. He continued before Yamato could answer, "See, this is Tsunade Senju. She is responsible for the Senju clan along with her brother and would like to take legal guardianship of you, so that you can be trained in the clan. You just won't receive the Senju surname. I hope that's not a problem, alright?" Minato said, while the boy seemed overwhelmed with so much information. "You're scaring him, Minato," Tsunade mocked, while asking the woman in charge of the orphanage to prepare the paperwork, approaching the boy and crouching in front of him, touching his shoulder. The boy took a deep breath when he saw the beautiful woman before him, who offered him a smile. "Look here, you idiot, if you don't come with us, something very bad will happen to you," she declared, dropping the smile and showing a look full of fury. "You're doing worse than me," Minato laughed, bringing his hand to his forehead in frustration. He pulled Tsunade away and tried a calmer approach, while asking Tsunade to go with the woman from the orphanage to arrange the paperwork. Then Minato called the boy to a corner. "So, you don't think about becoming a ninja? Someone strong and powerful? You have a lot of potential, you know?" "But, do you really think I could do that?" the boy murmured. "Yes, do you know why? Because you have a special power. I want you to help protect the village with it. That's why Tsunade will train you in the Senju clan. It will be the most suitable for you." He paused, the boy paying attention to everything he said. "But this is just between us, you have the same power as the first Hokage. That's why we want to take you to the clan, where you will be well treated and receive the proper training to use that power," he said, whispering, while the boy seemed frozen once again. "Anyway, I know this is sudden. Do you want to stay a bit longer and talk to your friends? Do you want to come with us and become a ninja?" Minato asked. At least he would give the boy a choice. It would not be like Danzo, who would abduct him as soon as he saw the Mokuton. The boy seemed to think for a moment before nodding to Minato. "I would like to be a ninja," he said. It was his dream, and he had felt crushed when he failed the academy selection. His body was very injured at that time, and it had been years. Minato smiled. "Well, that's what I wanted to hear," he said, as Tsunade returned some time later. "I'll just say goodbye to my friends today, alright?" the boy said shyly. They agreed. "That's fine, go ahead. We'll come back tomorrow to get you." "Be prepared," said Minato. With that, Tsunade and Minato left the orphanage. Now, the Senju would become the boy's legal guardian. "I hope we're making a good choice here, Minato," Tsunade murmured. "Don't worry about that. You've already raised a daughter, just don't kill him with your punches," Minato teased, before Tsunade took on a slightly more serious tone. "If things go wrong, will you take her?" She wasn't talking about Yamato. Obviously. "Even if things are calm in the village now, you know that, even if I didn't want her to, she would come. And still, I want to have her by my side," Minato said, and Tsunade nodded with a somber look. Thus, they returned to the Senju clan, with a heavier atmosphere than there should have been. After all, decisions would be made in the coming days that would change the lives of Minato and those closest to him forever. Chapter 293, The Village's Decision 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. On the last day before the vote, a report from Jiraiya arrived urgently at the village. Everyone around the council meeting, temporarily created, had mixed feelings, and it was no surprise when the atmosphere turned grim upon hearing the news about Jiraiya's report. The villages had finally launched the attack against the Land of Whirlpools, and all enemy forces were heading east of the Land of Fire to exterminate the Uzumaki. By this point, the ninja world already knew that Minato Namikaze had killed the leader of the Sand Village, shocking the entire world. His name was spoken from the mouths of the most powerful ninjas across the world, and his bounty in the bingo book had increased greatly, even though he had already demonstrated enough power to fight head-on against the leader of the Stone Village, the Tsuchikage, and the leader of the Cloud Village, the Reikage. He had not killed either of them, obviously. Even so, many already expected it could happen, and this was quite surprising even for those two Kages. Peace seemed rather fragile at this moment. The news of a Kage's death further weakened the relations between Konoha and foreign countries, leaving them very fragmented. No one spoke directly, but some looked at Minato with a certain anger in the village because of it. Although it was a small number, it was perfectly normal. After all, he couldn't please everyone. There would always be those who thought differently. That was the world, especially the ninja world. But that was not the main concern now. Perhaps in a few days the land of whirlpools would be attacked, and the vote to decide what Konoha's stance would be regarding this would take place tomorrow. Hiruzen stared at Minato in a peculiar way from the other side of the table along with the other temporary counselors, while the blonde read the report from Jiraiya, his sensei, with a calm demeanor. The village was more inclined to preserve itself than to fight alongside the Uzumaki, even though nearly half of the village still preferred to go and defend their allies. After all, refusing to do so was considered cowardly when they could bring the Uzumaki into the country. The Hokage still remembered very well the conversation he had with Orochimaru the day before, when they finally stopped to talk alone about the events. It was quite disturbing for the Hokage. Beginning of the flashback. What happened in Suna, Orochimaru? Hiruzen asked his student, who seemed to frown when questioned about it. You have no idea what that boy is capable of. An ironic smile appeared on Orochimaru's lips, but it did not seem like joy. It was more aimed at trying to hide his frustration. Be clearer, Orochimaru. The Hokage said with some frustration as he continued. 10 entire squads of Konoha and Suna were wiped out as if they were nothing, even with you and Raza, the Golden Sand, among them. In the end, it made no difference and only you survived alone with a small group of ninjas under my command. How they had lost with such strength was a frustrating mystery for Hiruzen. He had the reports from the surviving Umbu ninjas, but he needed to hear it from his student. From what I heard later, the Sand Village sent reinforcements. Even, the Kazekage was there as well. How did Minato survive the entire attack and still kill the Kazekage in front of all his ninjas? That doesn't make sense. Not knowing the full extent of Minato's power was still a mystery, and Hiruzen questioned it. Not even he could imagine half of what Minato had done. How was it possible for someone to hide such a powerful strength, when everyone believed him to be below what he had truly shown all these years? You have no idea what we saw, sensei. Orochimaru said in an ironic tone. Minato's body is unlike anything I've ever faced. He was hit multiple times, but his body always regenerates. No. He didn't even seem to get hurt. He spoke, raising one of Hiruzen's eyebrows. What do you mean? The Hokage had heard the reports of times when Minato was struck, while his body glowed and healed itself. He never exactly understood what that was and, no matter how hard he tried to uncover it, he never found any useful information. Minato had many ways of finishing off his enemies and missions, but since he was almost never hit, Hiruzen believed that this ability was somewhat limited. Because of that, he trusted they could deal with him. As long as they sealed him so he couldn't use the teleportation jutsu, he would be cornered. He was crushed by the rocks, sensei. There was no way he could have escaped. But here's the problem, his body isn't damaged by physical attacks. He recovers in a strange way. It's like the Hozuki from the Land of Water, where physical attacks don't work on them either, with their bodies turned into water. Minato seems to have the same type of ability, but we still haven't discovered his weakness. While the Hozuki clan has a weakness against lightning, Minato's body of light was unlike anything I've ever seen. Orochimaru spoke in a dark tone, recalling all the attacks. Nothing they tried against him worked. He simply toyed with all of us. Orochimaru concluded in a heavy voice. And how did you survive? Hiruzen had asked. I only survived because I managed to replace my body in every fatal attack he launched against me. But that also drained a lot of my chakra. If he had continued, I might be dead today. Orochimaru said, not at all pleased with it. And Orochimaru continued before Hiruzen could make any comment. He doesn't just have a body made of light, but also his speed is so fast that no one can keep up with him. He was already terrifying with the title of the fastest ninja in the world, but I'm inclined to say that we still underestimated him somehow. He can even fire highly destructive light beams, comparable to other S-rank jutsus. I believe that, from the beginning, he knew everything, the entire trap being created for him, but he simply accepted the trap being formed and allowed himself to be caught just to fight all of us. He didn't kill Raza because he chose not to, somehow. When thousands of Suna ninjas appeared with the Kazekage, he didn't hesitate to fight them at the same time he was facing another enemy. He went on killing ninjas like no one else. I've never seen anything like it. The Kazekage's black sand was easily surpassed by the powers the boy demonstrated. The leader of Suna was killed by Minato, and the boy didn't even seem to be trying. No wonder that, when I arrived at the village, Lord Danzo was already dead and Minato was leading several clans on the same night, pressuring you and the other elders. Orochimaru paused, then added. But I don't think he really needed to fight much, right, sensei? When you fell defeated by the Ninetales Jinchuriki. That's why I was even more intrigued when I heard about what happened last night. Hiruzen only stared at him in silence, his face darkening with the memory. Did you have any idea that Minato was accumulating so much power? Hiruzen asked. They were no longer referring only to the powers Minato had demonstrated, although they were terrifying. There were also things just as concerning, which had formed right under his nose without anyone noticing, given the powers Kushina and Suna had shown. Hiruzen would have been even more shocked if he knew what Mikoto was about to become as well. Do you think I had any idea about the power accumulating in the village, hidden from everyone? The answer is no, and I can understand your concern, sensei. But I don't think we can deal with this all of a sudden. The boy proves to be overwhelmingly powerful, hiding his abilities all these years. Then one day, he appears and stops hiding. At the same time, when no one had even seen Kushina leave her house since the kidnapping incident, she suddenly appeared mastering the fox's chakra, and no one imagined that a second user of the sage mode of the village would appear. Or should I say, the third, since Minato also demonstrated having sage mode from Mount Mayaboku. He cast 3 S-rank jutsus in the middle of the crowd of Suna ninjas. That was terrifying, and hundreds of them were wiped out in an instant. I wonder, sensei. Since when had we lost control of the village? Since when were we surpassed? Perhaps we should just accept that we've lost. Orochimaru sneered, clearly not liking being outmatched. He knew his sensei didn't either. Hiruzen had lost control of the village because of this, and things would be very different now. But that didn't stop Orochimaru from flashing an ironic smile at Hiruzen's skull. You know, you always boasted about wanting the village to be strong, to have powerful ninjas. Look at it now, perhaps its current build of ninjas has never been at its peak since the Senju brothers were alive, working side by side. Perhaps not even when Uchiha Madara was part of the village. The boy made that quite clear last night. But you don't seem to like that at all, do you, sensei? You used to boast, or at least spread throughout the village, through Danzo, that you were the most powerful Hokage who ever lived. The ninja god, as many called you. Now all those titles don't seem so important, do they? Hiruzen's scowl darkened even more at Orochimaru's mockery. I don't want to hear your provocations, Orochimaru. He snapped back. The student found that amusing, but Hiruzen continued. Remember that, just as things are bad for me, they're also bad for you. You've become an enemy of Minato. Orochimaru seemed to think about that for a moment, dropping the ironic smile. And what's the plan now, sensei, was all he asked. There is no plan, Orochimaru. At least I'm certain the village will choose not to fight. No one wants war again, no one wants to see their loved ones die, even if it's for an allied clan. Hiruzen said. I know, yes. You're certainly right. But we'll surely be in a bad position in the village. After this, the boy will forever leave his mark and there will be a new selection for a new Hokage, and there's no doubt he'll be chosen. Even if he doesn't execute you, you won't have an easy life. You'll lose all your privileges and power over the village.
Orochimaru said. "We're in the same boat, Orochimaru."
That was all Hiruzen debated, unwilling to argue further. Orochimaru just opened another ironic smile and began to rise, leaving the Sarutobi clan without saying anything else.
End of flashback.
Returning to the present day, there was nothing more they could do.
But Minato's silence was very strange in the Hokage's opinion. The boy wasn't doing anything to prevent the village from refusing to help the Uzumaki.
Hiruzen expected Minato, somehow, to try to undermine the vote, but that wasn't what was happening.
Minato seemed to accept the village's decision while remaining very calm. He is planning something.
Hiruzen still had a voice constantly telling him this. It was as if Minato had already accepted the village's outcome and, at the same time, had everything under control. It was strange. Anyway, it's good for us to start sending ninjas to all the borders, especially to the east side, reinforcing to protect the country from a possible combined attack from the nations, and protecting the border on Tsuna's side to prevent another possible retaliation.
Minato's voice sounded as everyone agreed.
Hiruzen looked at Minato, forcing himself to nod, having to agree with what the boy was saying.
But it was bothersome, making him wonder since when had he become someone in that meeting who only agreed or disagreed, while the boy had a more active voice than his own.
He saw himself losing his voice over the village's suggestions and discussions about its problems to a much younger child, and it was a little frustrating.
The meeting continued as they discussed the imminent attack. Send Jiraiya back to the village.
There's nothing more for him to gather information about there, and it's been years since he last returned to Konoha.
Minato suggested once again, and no one disagreed.
In the end, the meeting ended, and everyone returned to their clans and homes.
And a day passed. Finally, the voting began. Chapter 294, The Minato's Decision. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42.
All the ninjas gathered together with the citizens of the village before the faces of the Hokages. The ninjas were placing chakra into a paper within a large crowd while depositing the paper into an urn. There were two options, in favor or against following and sheltering the Uzumaki in the Land of Fire. While the common citizens of the village marked their choices on the paper with the two options, the urns were being filled. Thus it continued throughout the morning. It took time for the last vote to be deposited into one of the several urns, while the security carried out by the Yambu and a team under the direct command of the Hokage confirmed that no one had voted twice or tried to sabotage. Since it was a decision for the future of the village, everyone ended up going to vote, even though it was not an obligation. Everyone did it, since their lives would be affected depending on the result. At the end of the day, the result came out. And, as had already been predicted, the village chose not to help the Uzumaki. Many were angry, ashamed, and feeling cowardly because of the results. Others, however, were quite relieved, crying with joy for not having to return to war, or simply calm for seeing their loved ones no longer risking their lives. Even if that came through the sacrifice of thousands of people who were their allies. However, the village still seemed divided, since even though some voted against helping the Uzumaki clan, they felt ashamed of it, but everyone should respect the decision. While some shouts of joy were heard, the council had been summoned once again. The 5 members were there, discussing.
As you know, the village has chosen.
Hiruzen began, looking at the other 4 members, especially Minato. I hope you all accept the result. He added, while the atmosphere seemed quite gloomy in that room.
We know that, so yes, we accept the result.
Minato spoke in a calm tone, looking into Hiruzen's eyes. Hiruzen, in a way, wanted to mock Minato, as if all his efforts had been in vain in the end. But much had changed since that night. He might have kept his decisions and agreements with the 4 other leaders of the villages, but he had paid a high price. He had lost power. Soon he would leave the position of Hokage. The elders would also no longer have influence over the village.
Danzo was dead.
Whoever said that Hiruzen was not worried about the future of the village would be lying. He was terrified as he watched everything slip through his hands. So, there was no desire to find amusement in the victory, in the end. The village now regarded him almost as if he were a plague, hostile eyes coming from all sides, even from those who agreed with his decisions about the Uzumaki. Had he known that his actions would have led to this, perhaps Hiruzen would have changed his decision at the Kage summit and would not have sacrificed the Uzumaki. But now it was too late. At the very least, they would have peace and not war. Anyway, there is nothing more to discuss here. We will meet again in 2 days to deal with the new Hokage selection. Minato then said. Wait, this can still be postponed. Hiruzen protested. He knew that his position was no longer sustainable, but it was still too soon to leave. The crisis was not over. I agree with Lord Namikaze. In the coming weeks we must have a new person wearing that hat. Mizu Uchiha spoke in a serious tone. Perhaps this was the only way to help the surviving Uzumaki with what was to come in the following days. Clearly, the next Hokage was among the 4 ninjas there. And, aside from Hiruzen, all had ideas aligned with what Minato thought regarding helping the Uzumaki. The meeting went on for a little longer. Hiruzen tried to delay the decision, but it was useless, for he was outnumbered there. The council now had the power to decide any matter of the village through majority vote, precisely to no longer leave the Hokage at the center of all orders. It was time to begin removing him from the post once and for all. Minato, in turn, teleported to a corner of the village as night had already fallen, appearing in front of his house, more specifically at the gate, where the plaque above it was still blank. It should have been filled in, but it was useless now, as Minato could almost see the name Namikaze clan painted on it. He entered calmly and walked toward the large residence, which was already practically complete. Only a few details such as seals were missing, but the entire place was closed, with the basics ready to live in. The construction had been completed about 2 weeks earlier, but Minato had not yet had time to enjoy it. He came there because he knew he would find his girls gathered, as they had agreed to have dinner there today. The intention was at least to enjoy this place, perhaps the only time they would do so. He entered calmly into the kitchen, quite spacious, where a small table was occupied by 4 of them conversing, with the food already being set on the table. Minato. Kushina smiled when she saw him, wearing an apron while taking more food from the stove before bringing it to the table. He smiled back at her, and all the pairs of female eyes were on him the moment Kushina announced it. When he approached the table, Kushina came to him and kissed him lightly before returning to the stove to get a few more things. How did things go, Minato? How was the meeting? Suna asked, curious. Makoto, who was sitting with her eyes blindfolded, also paid attention, as did Hanabi. None of them were wearing headbands at that moment. Well, I requested a new organization for the selection of a new Hokage in 2 days. This will make our next actions easier with the village pressing us. Minato spoke calmly. Smart. We are going to leave with the Uzumaki then, aren't we? Suna guessed. Exactly. I don't want to make a big surprise for the village by announcing our departure. He replied. For some days now, he had been discussing with his companions the decision to carry out Plan B. Minato himself would go to the Uzumaki clan to defend them alone, or rather, he would take his future Namikaze family there. None of them thought twice about following him down this path, even knowing they could be considered criminals. Still, Minato wanted to do what was right. He would not let the Uzumaki clan be wiped out, even if he were considered a rogue ninja. And all of them supported his decision. We'll have little time. As soon as we reach the Uzumaki clan, the war will already be upon us. It will take only a few days before the enemies arrive. And now I can see. Even if the village had decided to help them, we would still be in a very difficult situation, because there would be no time to organize a full evacuation. The Hokage ensured that none of our ninjas were prepared to assist them. It's frustrating, I know, but even so, we will choose to do this. Minato said with conviction, in a very serious tone. We are with you, Minato. Makoto said, looking at him even while blindfolded. We are more than enough to face all 4 nations. Wasn't it for this that we trained during the last year and developed so much power? Yes, all of you are at the top of this village, if not at the top of the ninja world. Minato spoke with a proud smile.
He had his fruit, the hakis, and his S-rank jutsus.
Even without creating a Megazord like Kushina and Makoto could at their maximum potential, he was far more powerful and was already among the top of the world. And Minato knew, the powers of the girls in front of him were simply overwhelming. Hanabi was already at the level of an adult Kakashi. Suna even surpassed the legendary Sannin with her Sage Mode, since, beyond Senjutsu, she also possessed all her mother's abilities, being able to even invoke the Seal of 100 Forces after having accumulated chakra her entire life. She had surpassed Sakura at her peak by a wide margin. Then came Kushina. Even without full mastery of Kurama, since the seal still remained inside her, she was easily in second place among the girls. Still, she was more powerful than most Kages, if not all. Minato had made sure to train her to that level. It was no wonder she managed to bring down Hiruzen and his summon with ease, even though the third Hokage was not a very powerful Kage in Minato's opinion. And finally, Makoto. And according to Minato, she might stand above all the others. With her eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, she would soon awaken a complete Susanoo. Looking at his four girls, Minato could not ask for anything better. They were ready to face any force. And soon, the ninja world would tremble at this small group of ninjas who had risen in the leaf, fighting alongside the Uzumaki against the attack of the four great nations. Leave it to us, Databane. We'll make everyone run away from there real quick. Kushina shouted excitedly, finally joining the table. Minato pulled out his chair. A plate was already waiting for him at the head of the table, and he sat down calmly before his four companions, accepting the dinner and smiling. Of course. And we'll leave tonight. He decided. If the Uzumaki clan would be attacked in the coming days, then he himself would go there as quickly as possible in order to begin outlining the defense strategy for the island. No one disagreed, and they enjoyed dinner peacefully, forgetting their problems for a while. Looks like we won't be able to enjoy this house. Hanabi commented as everyone finished eating. Yes. It won't be this time that we'll enjoy this home. Minato replied, shifting his gaze toward Makoto's belly. There was already a larger than normal swelling, beginning to expand with the baby growing inside her womb. He would have preferred to be able to stay there, see his child born, and live peacefully without worrying about wars and conflicts. But that was a luxury he didn't have. This was the ninja world, a cruel world. His child would probably be born in Yuzushiogakure, while they all took care of defending the island. Do you think we'll come back? Suna asked in a low voice. I have a feeling we will. Minato gave a small smile and said with confidence, while the girls remained silent. He knew that helping the Uzumaki was temporary and that their future was to return to the village one day. They stayed there until it was late in the end, without speaking much. There was nothing to do, only to enjoy the house that, deep down, they knew they would never truly have. Do you think the Hokage will try to get rid of your property? Hanabi asked with concern. If he dares do that, we'll come back and beat him up. We'll thrash him. Kushina shouted angrily, but Minato only shrugged. I don't know what will happen. But that no longer matters now. I doubt the new Hokage will do that, since Hiruzen will no longer have power over the village. Now, it's time to return to the Senju clan. We need to take the Uzumaki to Yuzushiogakure. Minato said. Before actually leaving his chair, while the table was already cleared with Kushina herself having taken the dishes, Minato brought his hands to the back of his head and untied the knot that held his Konoha headband to his forehead. As he loosened the knot, it fell into his hands. He placed it on the table. All of them watched his actions in silence. His gaze fell for a few seconds in silence upon the symbol of the leaf. It was decided. He was doing this for Konoha. He was doing this for his own desires. He was doing this because he believed it was the right thing. All the girls remained silent, watching Minato pick up a kunai and strike it against the metal of the headband. With a firm stroke, he drew a cut from end to end through the middle of Konoha's symbol, marking his decision. From this moment on, he was officially a rogue ninja. Surprisingly, one by one, all the girls began to take their headbands from their pockets, where they had kept them. They imitated Minato and also slashed their symbols. Kushina, who no longer wore the headband Minato had given her when the academy ended, had never received one because she was to be the Jinchuriki after Mito and could not become a ninja. Minato had given her his own, saying that he would always be with her. He had to get another headband the next day. Kushina had always kept that one with care. And for so many years, she hadn't worn it. After such a long time, she took it and also cut through it with her kunai, while the sound of metal being slashed echoed in that room. It was not only Minato's decision, but that of his whole family. Chapter 295, Deserting the Village. Third-person POV. Konoha, year 42. As Minato and all the girls disappeared from the Namikaze estate, in the Senju clan, a meeting was taking place between Tsunade, Nawaki, Hanabi's grandfather, and all the Uzumakis of Mu Uzumaki's delegation. The place carried a tense atmosphere, as some Uzumakis spoke in anything but calm voices. "How can you do this to us?" said one of the Uzumakis with anger and frustration over the village's outcome. "I lost my brother in the war, he gave his life fighting for this village. And now I'm going to die along with my family, because Konoha isn't brave enough to fight for its allies." "No, quite the opposite, they are cowards," said another Uzumaki, growling. "Calm down. What's done is done. There's no way to undo it. Complaining won't change anything," said Mu Uzumaki in a wiser tone. "You speak as if we aren't about to die along with our families. I don't care about serving the land of fire, I don't care about being subordinate to the village of Konoha, as long as my family is saved. I no longer want to live with this pride you elders demand from us," spoke a third Uzumaki. "I know that, and trust me, I would rather follow that path too." All the leaders had come to the conclusion that it would be better to take shelter in Konoha after Minato's visit, as long as we weren't destroyed. "But surely we haven't lost all hope, have we?" Mu added. "You think a boy will change our fate?" "Sorry, but I don't believe in that," said another with a skeptical tone. "Tisk." Tsunade spoke up for the first time. "After everything he's done, you still doubt him?" Tsunade said in a tone full of anger, her voice echoing among the Uzumakis. "I still don't believe he can do anything. We're fighting against 4 nations at once. It's not like a boy can simply defeat all 4 nations by himself," retorted the same Uzumaki from before. "Maybe the boy isn't alone." Tsunade paused with a calculating look. "If you don't believe in him, I'm sure he won't go alone, and a perfect Jinchuriki will be more than welcome in the war to protect you," she informed. "You think Lady Kushina will come as well?" "The village wouldn't allow that," commented Mu, with a tone of surprise. "Trust me, the village can't hold back any of them if they decide to go to the Uzumaki clan to fight. Besides, they just arrived. You'll know your answer right this very moment," Tsunade said while looking toward the door, sensing the flow of chakra that had just entered the house. As did everyone else there, since most of them were censors. The door opened and Minato approached, with his 4 companions behind him. All the Uzumaki's eyes turned toward them. "Minato, you didn't." Nawaki murmured with wide eyes, stunned to see the headband clutched in his hand, with a visible slash cutting through the leaf symbol. "As you can see, we've made a decision. It's time to put Plan B into action." Minato spoke firmly. After all, this had always been the plan in case he couldn't make Konoha partners in war with the Uzumakis. To go on his own to defend the Uzumakis, to not allow his clan to be destroyed, for it was one of the most valuable forces in this world, and his goal was to not let this world grow weaker, whether to face Madara or the Otsutsuki clan. This world needed to be strong, and even if he had to make questionable decisions, that did not make him a traitor or a villain. He would act believing in what was right. "This is Minato's decision and we'll support him, Databane," said Kushina, raising her headband also with a slash in the middle, representing another rogue ninja. "Anyway, let's get organized. We'll be going to the Uzumaki clan as soon as everyone is ready, so prepare yourselves," Minato said. "Wait. Are you sure about this? Won't you regret this decision? This will be a path of no return, Minato. We may not even survive this." Mu spoke up, with a cautious tone, as Minato raised an eyebrow at him.
What is it, Lord Mu? Don't believe in me now? Minato asked calmly. That's not it, Minato.
I'm just a little worried, because if you can save yourself, it's better to stay in the village. We'll be fighting against 4 nations. Even though you killed a powerful Kage, it still won't be an easy fight, and you could die with us fighting against all the nations, he said.
Don't worry about that. This is my decision, it's my ninja way, and you can be sure of one thing. Minato smiled. We'll be fine. We can win this war.
Just trust in my abilities and my companions. Trust me, I have powerful allies behind me, and there is no doubt we'll do very well in this war, he said with unshakable confidence. Silence filled the place for a few seconds before Mu opened a small smile, satisfied with the answer. If you say so, Minato, I believe in you. We will never forget this act, no matter the outcome of this war, the old Uzumaki said, pleased. All right, you heard him. Let's gather our things and get moving, said Mu. The Uzumakis began leaving, and the girls also went to their rooms to grab their things, mostly clothes.
Minato approached Tsunade and Nawaki, who were still standing in the room. Where's Yamato? Minato asked.
The boy had been in the clan training these last few days while learning the first steps to releasing chakra, though Tsunade had been quite strict with him. He went to bed early, after exhausting himself all day training, she said.
I imagine. Just go easy on him. Minato offered a kind smile. Tsunade clicked her tongue and didn't respond to the provocation hidden in Minato's words. Now let me talk about something even more important. She began.
You'd better take very good care of my daughter and the other girls, are you hearing me, Minato? She said, with a look that bordered on deadly. Seems reasonable, mother-in-law. Minato said, while the woman shot him an even deadlier look at that last word, without him showing the slightest bit of shame.
Minato then continued. Are you sure you'll handle the questions that will come after our disappearance?
We can simply leave through the front gate, fleeing the village, so as not to cause you trouble.
Minato said. It's not that simple. Tsunade replied, shaking her head. It doesn't matter if you left safely, Konoha won't be able to do anything about it.
Besides, Hiruzen is about to lose his position as Hokage.
A new Hokage will arise, she commented, pausing.
With you absent, only 2 people can be chosen for the position, and you know very well you could win if you stayed, right? She said. I know you're referring to Tsukumo and Jiraiya, or even to yourself as a candidate.
Minato said.
But none of us would have as much chance of winning as you. The village trusts you. Even if you hadn't acted that night, with the strength you possess alongside the girls, you created enormous pressure on the village when you formed your marriages, linking several powerful clans and even people already at the top of Konoha. There's no one more suitable than you to take on that role. After all, another Hokage would have many problems leading the village while everyone awaited the opinion of the most powerful family in Konoha after you all got married.
Tsunade stated the obvious.
The village wouldn't do anything without Minato's opinion, not only because of him, but because Kushina, Suna, Hanabi, and Makoto had ties and powers known throughout the village after that night. Even though the latter hadn't been seen fighting, everyone knew she couldn't possibly be weak. Even so, that would come at a great cost, and I won't allow the Uzumaki to be destroyed. It's not the time for me to become Hokage. Tsunade, the village is already thriving even without me and my companions. We still have many powerful ninjas. You'll be fine. Maybe I won't become Hokage now, but I don't think that dream will be lost forever. Minato said with surprising calmness. If you think this is the right path, I won't stop you. Just take care of my daughter and the other girls, she repeated. It'll be fine. There's one more thing. I wanted to ask for your blessing. Since we'll be away from the village and with Makoto pregnant, I'll marry her. And I also want to marry your daughter and the others as well, we're adults. I just wanted your permission for this since. Minato didn't finish, as he should ask Dan's permission as soon as father. It will probably happen in the coming months, and it will be at the Uzumaki clan, he said, while noticing Tsunade grow a little angry, and not because of the near mention of Dan. You bastard! You won't even let me go to my daughter's wedding. Do you have any idea how angry I am at you right now? She said, a little upset. Sorry about that, but the circumstances aren't in our favor. Still, I'm sure you'll love seeing your grandchildren soon. Minato said. You'd better give me healthy grandchildren, you idiot. Tsunade replied, seeming a little calmer, while Nawaki scratched his head beside them, thinking Minato was playing with fire with every comment. Minato himself, however, seemed to already know how to deal with that woman. Anyway, this won't be a goodbye. We'll be back soon. And when that moment comes, Konoha will never have been as powerful as it will be then. So powerful that no other village will dare challenge us again. I promise. Minato said with surprising confidence. Tsunade nodded in acknowledgement before Minato raised his hand for a shake, while Tsunade grabbed it and pulled him into a hug. I want you to also take care of yourself, Minato. You're important to us too, you've always been considered family, and my grandfather made that very clear more than 10 years ago. And thank you for always protecting my daughter. I don't think I could ask for a better son-in-law. Just as I thank you for everything you've done for us, for saving my brother. Your achievements are only beginning and the entire world will undergo immense changes with your actions. She said, emotional, with him returning the hug. He let go of her a moment later, as he walked up to Nawaki. Well, it seems you'll have some problems with our disappearance, but now you're the leader of the Senju clan. I'm sure you'll have a place on the council. Minato said to Nawaki. As it always should have been, and not a bunch of lesser clans who were lucky enough to be Tobirama's disciples. Minato mocked, for the village should always have had its founders making the decisions in a council, something that never happened thanks to Hiruzen, Danzu, and the others. Thank you for everything, Minato. Thank you for saving me in the war and for helping me so much when I was in depression, or even with my new arm, he said, as he shook Minato's hand, who gripped his forearm firmly in a gesture of camaraderie. Soon we'll all be reunited again. I hope to see you married to Miss Senju as well, whoever she may be, the next time we meet. Minato said, while Nawaki just nodded, laughing. He didn't seem so embarrassed anymore when it came to women. Anyway, good luck with the village too. If you need anything, use your chakras, but it wouldn't be good for me to come back here for a while. Minato said. Are you sure it won't be some other member of the village trying to use it to set you up in a trap? Nawaki asked. I can feel the chakra that calls me, so I'll know very well if it's you or not. Either way, this is a temporary farewell. Minato repeated, while Yamato's training would remain with Tsunade, with the Senju clan's scrolls at his disposal, as well as being trained by a Senju to improve the boy's chakra. Yamato could even become more powerful than the original if he had better guidance during his developmental years as his body grew. The girls appeared a moment later, carrying bags they had taken from the room, and began saying their goodbyes to Tsunade and Nawaki as well. Uzumaki's also appeared, giving a brief farewell, while everyone headed to the main hall, where Minato was finishing writing his last scrolls, informing some people in the village of his departure and why he was making his decision that night. He was officially declaring himself a rogue ninja. This message would go to Tsukumo Hatake, Mizu Uchiha, and Shikaku Nara's father, informing them of his decision that night, as he placed the rogue ninja headband on his forehead and tied the knot behind his head. Kushina, Suna, Hanabi, and a blindfolded Makoto made the same gesture. Let's go, he said, as 4 clones appeared around the group, forming hand seals and connecting to each other with fuinjutsu that spread across the floor. In the next moment, everyone else began disappearing at the same time. He had to use clones to increase the intensity of the teleportation technique, since the trip to another country was longer than they could usually manage. That's why Minato needed to focus more of his chakra. He teleported himself, more than a dozen Uzumakis, his brides, and Hanabi's grandfather, who could not stay in the village. And so, at that moment, Minato and his companions left the Leaf Village, which would throw the entire village into massive confusion. That night, Konoha's power dropped drastically as its strongest ninja, the Jinchuriki, and other precious members left Konoha as rogue ninjas. They advanced toward the Uzumaki clan, where true life and the real challenge would begin. Chapter 296, They have no idea of the approaching. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. Suna opened her eyes as she looked at the window, seeing that the sun was already shining through the 3 windows of that house, indicating the start of the morning. She lifted the upper part of her body, stretching her arms and yawning, while looking to the side and seeing 5 futons, with 4 occupied and 1 empty. She had felt Minato leaving about 20 minutes earlier along with other members of the house as soon as they woke up, even though she was still asleep, managing to detect the movement of chakra unconsciously and not caring enough to wake up, since it didn't seem to be an urgent or dangerous situation. The other futons were used by Makoto, Hanabi, and the latter's grandfather, sleeping in the middle of the living room in one of the Uzumaki clan's houses, none other than Kushina's mother's house. Kushina herself had gone to sleep in her mother's room, trying to recover the years spent away from each other. When they arrived at the clan the previous night, they had a short meeting with the clan leaders along with the head, which left them quite frustrated with Konoha's response after everything. They cursed and complained about everything that had happened, not that they didn't have the right to feel that way. At the same time, Minato represented the small but powerful group, showing enough courage along with his companions to try to mediate the Uzumaki clan's catastrophe. The Uzumakis seemed a little skeptical about it, but respected Minato more than ever according to Kushina. The conversation between the leader and the elders did not last long, with everyone wanting to discuss more about what would happen with the group that had arrived to help them. It was decided that, the next day, they would meet again to discuss more clearly what they would do next or even to thank them for coming. Kushina wasted no time in wanting to sleep at her mother's house. That was how they ended up in that house, with Minato having refused the leader's request to stay in his mansion and instead going to Akahana Uzumaki's house, at Kushina's own request, who wasn't upset at all about receiving them so suddenly, offering the living room to set up the futons, happy to have her daughter back after some days away. Suna noticed movement in the kitchen, knowing very well it was Minato, Kushina, and Akahana. She got up and left the living room behind, entering the kitchen and seeing Kushina and her mother working on chores, while Minato was sitting at the table. "Good morning, Suna," Kushina said cheerfully, as she finished heating the water. "Good morning, everyone," Suna replied. "You're already up once again. Come, join me," Minato said calmly, as she sat down beside him. "I think we'd better call the others," Kushina's mother commented. "Don't worry, they're already coming." "Waking up after I leave," Suna said, as Hanabi, Makoto, and the elderly man also entered the kitchen. "Come, join us at the table," Akahana said, as she served the coffee and everyone gathered. "You are very kind, miss. Thank you for your hospitality," Hanabi's grandfather said gratefully. "It was nothing. I'm happy to meet Kushina's friends, especially now that she confirmed to me last night that you are also her true family," Akahana said, winking at Minato. She had probably been told by Kushina about everything, so many young girls around just one boy. Not to mention that one of them was pregnant and it wasn't Kushina. Suna didn't say anything, nor did she try to express anything. She was already used to the idea of having to share him with the others since the academy days. At first, she believed Minato would be destined only for her, since she was the first to interact with him among all the others, when she had sat directly beside him in the academy just because she used to be spoiled and thought it would be fun to annoy him. But at the same time, besides him being the most handsome boy in the class, there was something about him, which was why she approached him from the very first day and ignored everyone criticizing her for getting close to an orphan civilian when she was the Senju princess, just like her mother. But she couldn't provoke him much when the Uchiha sat on the other side of the table, and it didn't take long for her to discover Makoto, who also looked at him in a not-so-conventional way, as if she too was attracted to Minato. Even with those disputes happening since that moment, putting the boy in the middle of them, Makoto always seemed to find an excuse to stare at her from across the way, while Minato remained between the two of them. Makoto would find an excuse to stare at Suna, only so that she could look at the boy the whole time. She felt threatened, even though she was just a little girl having silly thoughts about him, like a childish romance throughout the months. Even though Minato didn't show great skills at first, she knew there was something special about him, something that became clear when he surpassed everyone, even them, by the end of the year. Afterwards, the dispute began to be summarized as two clans, perhaps even transforming her rivalry with Makoto into something more intense precisely because of Minato, more than because of the history between the Senju clan and the Uchiha clan. Deep down, she knew it was just because of the boy. She hated being in that fangirl position, with her tsundere attitude against the proud rival Uchiha, but she couldn't deny that was exactly what was happening. Years later came Kushina, who seemed to have all of Minato's attention from the moment he saw her, which secretly filled her with jealousy and left her frustrated. Later, came Hanabi, also joining them. When Suna realized it, Minato was already surrounded by women, and she didn't know when things started going wrong, remembering that first day in the academy when she could have had him to herself. But now she didn't care anymore. He seemed happy with all of them, and she knew he needed them all by his side too. This moment proved it more than ever, after everything they had gone through together. Not only had she lived a life beside Minato, but each one of them there had also experienced unique moments with him, and it would be impossible to deny that there was much more than just an attraction to someone handsome and talented like him. There was something Minato had built with each of them. So, she could say she was completely calm when people asked and were astonished to realize that Minato had 4 future wives around him. Even with all the suspicion, it no longer shook her or made her feel embarrassed. They ate their first meal of the day peacefully, with scrambled eggs, coffee, and tea. The Uzumaki clan had a reasonable amount of food grown on the island, as well as a farm where they kept cows, pigs, and chickens to feed the clan. Because of this, the island was quite independent and almost didn't need trade, except for what they exchanged with the Land of Fire, since they were self-sufficient even when it came to food. Let's go to the leader's house. Mu left a scroll saying we need to plan and discuss some things and also that we need to find a place to stay. I wouldn't want to trouble Miss Akahana for another night, Minato said as soon as he finished his meal. You don't need to worry about me, Minato. You can stay here. Kushina's mother tried to argue. But Minato shook his head. I appreciate the hospitality for this night and also your invitation, but we need to find a better place, bigger, you know. Minato scratched his head, not wanting to seem rude to Kushina's mother, while she ended up understanding that they wanted a place where everyone could be more comfortable, as this house couldn't shelter them all. It's alright, if that's the case, I don't see any problem. There are some places in the village that are empty. The leader will surely be able to make them available, Akahana said. Well, let's go then. We have some matters to settle, Minato said, as everyone began to leave, leaving only Kushina's mother in the house. The group continued walking toward the leader's house. Minato had never seen the village at the very start of the morning and was certainly amazed to see so many Uzumakis of all ages coming out of their homes, whether children running around, men heading out to work or just to handle business, while many Uzumaki women were carrying empty baskets to the village's central market, intending to replenish their household supplies. Minato sighed. Now it wasn't just him drawing everyone's attention. His blonde hair stood out from afar, and the curious gazes landed directly on him. And now, everyone was also staring at Suna, Hanabi, her grandfather, and Makoto, who walked beside Kushina, also attracting attention. People wondered who that Uzumaki girl was and why she was walking with those strangers. Some Uzumaki shinobi approached, saying they would escort them. No one refused, and so they continued through the village, still observed by curious eyes and discreet whispers, with fingers pointing at them. The children pointed at them as if they were seeing the strangest things they had ever witnessed, just because they had different colored hair. They look at us as if we were strangers, Hanabi commented. Remember when the academy classmates treated Kushina as something exotic? Even though they were cruel back then, they were still surprised by the color of her hair. It's no wonder that we also seem exotic to this crowd of Uzumakis right now, Suna said. Yes, but soon they'll get used to us. They seem so calm, Minato commented, analyzing the village. It seems the leaders are maintaining a peaceful atmosphere, and I doubt they know about Konoha's rejection. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so passive, strolling through the streets so calmly, without worry. Maybe they don't even know that the attacks have already started getting closer to the village. They only depend on themselves now, they can't count on anyone else.
Minato was thoughtful, staying silent while observing the movement of the island as the Uzumaki shinobi kept curious children away, who tried to approach the strangers.
It's a matter of destruction or salvation.
And they'd probably laugh if they knew that the only reinforcements who came to help the clan are just a bunch of 5 teenagers under 20 years old, walking through their streets, and an old man who was certainly a retired ninja. He couldn't help but murmur in a whisper so that no one else could hear his thoughts. They went on until they reached the clan's house, where the leader himself, Masaki, Mu, and all the other elders by his side were standing to receive them.
"I see you've arrived. Well, we're going to have some meetings before we begin alerting the whole clan.
There's no reason to hold this back any longer. We must immediately start working on the island's defense,"
the leader said, with Minato nodding as he greeted him and the others.
"All right, we can talk.
I would also like to give some strategic points and a few ideas so we can begin working on the clan's defense,"
Minato said, pausing before continuing.
"Anyway, I'd also like to go to one of the houses you had already offered us yesterday. I like the idea of one exclusively just for us,"
Minato asked politely. The leader nodded. "Very well, we can do that now. You can come with me.
We'll begin our discussion, and we'd like to have all of you in the meeting, since you're the only ones from Konoha here," he said. And so they followed him into the house, where the other elders came along, waiting. At the same time, Minato couldn't help but glance back for a moment before crossing the mansion's doors, thinking about Konoha, wondering if they already knew that they had left the village and what they were thinking of them at that very moment. He was curious, after all, he had left many people behind for his own reasons. Gai, Duei Gai, the members of the Ghost Squad, Inoshikacho, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Nawaki, Sakumo, Kakashi.
Either way, that didn't matter anymore.
Now he had to keep his mind focused elsewhere. He turned his gaze back to the entrance as he walked along with all the others.
Chapter 297 Village Situation 01. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. The Leaf Village dawned strangely that morning.
While the leaders of the Hatake, Uchiha, and Nara clans already had an idea of why, even before anyone else in the village. They had received Minato's message the moment he began leaving the village. The night before, as soon as they all read what was written in Minato's message, they immediately frowned and went to the Senju clan in search of answers. But what they found there was only Nawaki already waiting for them, informing them that Minato had left the village and that there was nothing they could do to stop him.
The message was clear on Minato's scroll. "I'm going to protect the Uzumaki clan, even if that makes me a traitor."
With that single sentence, he had disappeared.
All 3 leaders had different opinions about it. Sakumo already had an idea that this would happen.
Minato seemed far too calm with the result of the village not helping the Uzumaki clan in exchange for peace, and he said that the village needed a new Hokage directly to him. At the same time, he was the favorite to take the position, even at such a young age. He had already proven to have the favor of most of the village when he organized a large part of the clans to unite around him. But still, his last words seemed to indicate that he would no longer be an option, as if Sakumo were, at the moment, the best choice and not him. Sakumo should have spoken to him directly when he heard about this matter, but his students simply disappeared before he had the chance to talk. He was also surprised at Minato's determination to protect the Uzumakis to the point of fleeing the village, throwing everything away, his career.
And not only that.
Upon arriving at the Senju clan, they discovered that the Jinchuriki had also left with him. It was no surprise knowing she was Minato's fiancée, but they knew very well what it meant for the village to no longer have a Biju, even if they hadn't used it in either of the 2 wars.
It was a situation no one could ignore.
Even so, Sakumo and the others did not immediately seek out the Hokage to discuss it. The boy had deceived everyone when he proposed the Hokage's replacement, arranging for discussions to begin in 2 days. And today they discovered it was only a way to divert attention. Lord Nara seemed quite worried. If Minato was protecting the Uzumakis and fighting alongside his companions, one of them being none other than the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and, moreover, a perfect Jinchuriki, everyone would immediately think that Konoha could have sent reinforcements, breaking the agreement. In a way, the four nations might not even blame Konoha, since Nawaki warned that all five had headbands cut in half, which indicated they were rogue ninjas, disassociated from the village. But it was still an uncertain outcome. The four nations might accept the fact that ninjas had deserted from Konoha and joined the Uzumaki clan. Or they might accuse Konoha of breaking the agreement they had made to preserve peace, even having set a trap against them. Worse still, they might see an opportunity to attack Konoha, since now it no longer had such powerful ninjas as Minato and his companions, especially the Biju, even if it had never been used.
Well, there's nothing more we can do. He's already with the Uzumaki clan. I just hope my daughter is safe.
This still worries me, Mazu Uchiha said with some apprehension. After all, if she displayed powers like the legendary Uchiha, he wouldn't know whether to be happy or worried, as the consequences would be incalculable for the clan. The world would fear the Uchiha clan once again, but at the same time, Makoto was no longer associated with the clan, not anymore. Well, there's no point discussing this now. Let's leave this conversation for tomorrow. We'll summon the council and see what we must do, if we can do anything at all. According to Jiraiya's message, in a few days the Uzumaki clan will be attacked. And it's not as if we could simply show up there and ask Minato, along with Kushina and the other girls who are with him, to return to the village. Lord Nara said calmly. Let's go and rest our minds, we'll talk later,
Tsukumo said.
With that, the three left, leaving Nawaki aside. He knew those three leaders would not be a headache to deal with. The problem would be what came after. The next day this place would be full of Umbu ninjas looking for answers about Minato disappearing from the village. Tsukumo arrived at his home and the first thing he noticed was the sound of lightning coming from the courtyard. He found his son creating a thunderbolt in his hand while holding that hand tightly with the other. He knew that Kakashi was secretly developing the same technique that Minato used with lightning. The Hokage had promised him that, since Minato had given the village's jutsu scrolls to him many years ago. Tsukumo was quite surprised to see that his own son had managed to perform it successfully in just a few months, even before being officially placed as an incompetent shinobi of the village. But what really made him raise his eyebrow was the scroll beside Kakashi. The roll was slightly open, clearly showing the complete technique. It seemed that he had been rewarded by the Hokage after all, but upon seeing the handwriting on the scroll, there was no doubt, it belonged to Minato. It was the same handwriting he had seen on countless Fuinjutsu scrolls that Minato created, even when they were training Kenjutsu and he would stop to write or develop seals. And the Hokage would never hand over the original scroll written by Minato to anyone else.
Hello, son.
Kakashi was startled, immediately looking at his father heading into the house while stopping to look at him, even as his hand still trembled with the lightning he had created. Little by little, he undid the technique, until nothing remained but a few small sparks dissipating into the air.
You seem busy. Did Minato give you this? Tsukumo asked calmly, pointing at the scroll.
Kakashi looked for a while before silently nodding, as he stared at his father. Kakashi still remembered very well the conversation they had had some time ago, on the day he received the scroll.
I'm surprised by this, Tsukumo murmured.
He gave it to me when I found him near his property.
I've been training since then,
Kakashi replied with an indifferent tone, though his curious eyes seemed to want to say something more to his father. He omitted the fact that Minato had punched him in the face when the boy belittled and dishonored his own father because of his reputation within the village. Kakashi felt guilty for that. Very guilty. Even more so when everything indicated that it had been a move by the elders to try to remove Tsukumo, his father, as a possible force that could replace the Hokage. Minato had defended Tsukumo in front of everyone and without hesitation, even if it went against the unanimous opinion of the village. The white-haired boy had been so blind to his own rules and orders that he had never stopped to question them. Minato was completely different, he questioned orders, and that made Kakashi think he was a flawed ninja at first. In the end, someone who could easily be surpassed by Kakashi. At least that's what Kakashi believed a long time ago, when he first started hearing about the prodigy Minato was becoming, both at home and in the academy. He had graduated in record time, and just for that, Kakashi thought he should be greater than Minato, but that wasn't the case. He believed that in a short time, he would have a greater name than him. However, this did not prove to be true, since it was Kakashi who was far behind, and he could never surpass Minato. His former behavior, his fixation on following rules, had made him blind. Minato said one should follow rules when possible, but that he would break them without a second thought if a comrade needed to be saved. He would do so against anyone, even against the Hokage's orders. He proved that a few nights ago. Kakashi had received a mission from the Hokage to prevent his father from acting against the village, while Minato organized all the clans to pressure the Hokage. And even though, in the end, the Uzumakis were not helped as they had hoped, Minato still fought for it. He tried to do the right thing, and Kakashi could not deny that.
And how are you doing with the technique?
Tsukumo then asked, pulling Kakashi out of his thoughts, as the father wanted to know more about his son.
I'm trying to master it.
It's a bit difficult to maintain the lightning. The chakra is very dense and volatile, its intensity changes all the time, and it's hard to keep it stable.
But I've made some progress in the past few days. I tried piercing some rocks in the training field. Only it's complicated to control.
Kakashi explained.
I imagine so. The technique has its problems, as I can see.
And the flash must not be easy on the eyes.
Tsukumo replied. Minato can use the technique. I don't understand. Kakashi murmured.
Yes, but Minato is a sensor. He can feel everything in front of him without any dojutsu.
And I doubt he's just a simple sensor.
After hearing what they say about him, he might even perceive things inside barriers.
Which should be impossible. Tsukumo commented, laughing. And what do you think I need to do to use it?
Kakashi asked, seeming to put aside his pride. Honestly, without a dojutsu like the Byakugan or the Sharingan, or even without a sensory ability, it would be better if you didn't use this technique. The first two you cannot have, perhaps the last remains.
Maybe you can develop it like I did. You think I can become a sensor?
Kakashi asked, curious. It had been so long, years, since he had a proper conversation with his father, while still feeling guilty all the time.
I developed sensory techniques over time. If you want, I can teach you.
Tsukumo suggested, watching his son carefully.
I'd love to learn, father.
Kakashi said with a little more emotion in his voice.
Tsukumo raised an eyebrow upon hearing his son call him father.
It had been so many years since he last heard that. Then we will begin, after dealing with a bit of the village's mess. Tsukumo replied and turned toward the house.
Father!
Kakashi called out as Tsukumo was about to go inside. The man stopped and looked at his son.
What is going to happen to the village, really?
The Hokage-sa.
The Hokage is retiring. Who will be the next Hokage?
Kakashi asked.
We don't know yet who will be Hokage. But things are more complicated than we thought. Tsukumo replied. Can Minato become Hokage? Kakashi asked next.
Very doubtful.
Minato wouldn't be the most suitable to take that position now. Tsukumo said with a melancholic tone. Why? I don't understand. Aren't his techniques rivaling yours? They say he's even stronger. Tsukumo heard that and wanted to laugh. That's true.
He is even stronger than I am, I admit.
Tsukumo said without hesitation.
My skills with the sword are formidable. However, Minato is versatile with a multitude of techniques, not to mention his unique abilities. According to the reports about what happened in the Land of Wind, it seems he hadn't even shown all his capabilities yet. As a child, he already defeated entire squads alone. Not to mention that sword form where he turns it into something black.
I've never seen anything like it. He might even surpass me with the sword itself, my specialty. Tsukumo couldn't help but think. The boy was a monster.
Kakashi looked at his father with doubt.
Then, if he's obviously stronger, why can't he become Hokage? Minato left the village, Kakashi. Tsukumo replied more seriously now.
He made the decision to help the Uzumaki clan. He did that tonight, even if it cost him the Hokage position that could have been his in the coming days.
He finished. Kakashi was stunned, unable to believe what he was hearing. Chapter 298 Village Situation 02. Third-person POV. Konoha, Year 42. What?
Yesterday.
How did he do that?
Hiruzen shouted with such desperation that he stuttered upon hearing about it, while he and the 3 other advisors gathered in the Hokage building. All of them, except Hiruzen, had received a letter from Minato informing them about his departure from the village with the intention of going to help the Uzumaki clan by leaving with them, never returning. He left the village and took Tsuna Senju, Makoto Uchiha, Kushina Uzumaki, and Hanabi Hyuga. Everyone there could clearly see the frustration in the Hokage's words.
No. No. This is terrible. I thought he was only going to take the Uzumaki away.
Do you have any idea what he just did? Said the Hokage to the 3.
Yeah, we know that, but there's nothing to be done. He's already with the Uzumakis by now, said Mazu Uchiha with a slightly calm tone.
The village is without its Jinchuriki.
I can't believe they did this. Do you realize the danger we're in right now?
When the villages find out we no longer have the Kyuubi, they'll see us as a weak village, as an easy target. And when they see the Kyuubi's chakra being used against them in the Uzumaki clan's attack, they'll assume we helped them. Hiruzen raised his voice to a somewhat desperate tone.
That might not happen.
Lord Nara said this time, with a calm, gleaming look. I believe their headbands were torn.
They didn't hide it. They're rogue ninjas.
The villages could very well see us as victims too.
Even so, they might attack us. Hiruzen said.
Hiruzen, you said they would keep the peace.
Are you telling me they wouldn't honor the agreement?
Then you were failing to preserve peace.
Sakumo said calmly. This seemed to frustrate the Hokage even more. You don't understand.
The bijus serve to maintain the balance between the villages, since they can be used as bargaining chips to preserve peace, as a threat of a war of mass destruction. Without it, we'll be targets of the other villages' greed, said Hiruzen.
Well, we're already targets of greed, aren't we? It's no wonder you had to negotiate with an allied clan.
I won't say whether Minato is right or wrong, but I admit he's doing what he believes in.
Nizu said.
We must immediately send a group to Uzushigakure.
We have to bring them back, said Hiruzen with an urgent tone. We have some time before the attack, yes. But I doubt Minato will do anything if he doesn't want to return. Hokage, what do you plan to do?
We'll still have a chance to talk to them before the 4 nations attack arrives.
Nara said. Hiruzen only gave a dark look before nodding.
The situation was becoming even worse than he imagined. Still, we should extend the selection of the new Hokage.
Sakumo said at the end. No.
The decision of a new Hokage must be postponed. With this we might be facing a war. Another crisis is arising right now. The Hokage spoke in a grim tone. How could he abandon his post when the village was in this situation?
For Hiruzen, they could not risk the village's stability now.
They had to remain united.
She must be kept. All this is happening because of his actions. There is no reason to keep him. Sakumo spoke in a serious tone, while the Hokage grew increasingly grim.
In the end, the discussion continued a little longer, and they had to report the information to the village publicly, since the entire village needed to know that Minato had deserted, taking with him Tsuna Senju, Makoto Uchiha, Kushina Uzumaki, and Hanabi Hyuga. Hiruzen announced this to everyone with sorrow. However, Sakumo could see him trying to turn the village against Minato, which left everyone shocked, and the news spread like wildfire. As Nawaki had predicted, a large number of ninjas went to the Senju clan to investigate Minato's departure, while he answered questions from the ANBU and even from the Hokage himself, who looked far from pleased with the situation. The information began to spread throughout the village, and it didn't take long before everyone, even civilians, knew that Minato Namikaze had gone to the Senju clan and intended to fight alone. Some people were angry at him for fleeing the village like that, but most felt deeply ashamed to see that Konoha had decided to turn its back on the Uzumakis in exchange for peace.
The boy stuck to his decision to help the clan, even though the entirety of Konoha had abandoned the Uzumakis. In the center of the village. Why are we here? Shouldn't we be helping them? I don't think it's that simple.
The village's decision has already been made.
And we'll stay here as cowards? Is that what we want to be?
He fled the village as well.
That makes him a coward. He's going to fight against 4 nations alone, and you still say he's a coward? Did we do the right thing?
In the end, we are here inside our gates and Minato will fight alone against the nations. Meanwhile, at Ramanichiraku, with Tucci serving lunch at that table full of jonins, he couldn't help but pay attention to the conversation among the shinobi about Minato. He let out a sigh as he returned to the counter. Tucci already knew Minato had left the village, thinking back to how he had stopped by to have lunch there the day before with his companions, while Kushina, more cheerful, had exclaimed the entire time about the ramen, asking for more. The news that Minato had left the village had certainly caught him by surprise. After everything he had done, now people at every table spoke of nothing else. "I hope the boy will be all right," was all Tucci could say as he returned to the kitchen to prepare more food for the customers. In another corner of the village. "Father," young Guy murmured as he was training. Guy had been quite confused and surprised over the past few days, ever since he started hearing about what was happening in the village after that night. On the night when all the commotion broke out in the center of the village, his father had told him that Minato asked him to stay safe and that at any sign of danger, he should remain alert. Dewey went looking for Minato, wanting to know what was happening in the village after all the explosions. He knew some ninjas were watching his house, but none of them approached. Still, the feeling of being observed was far from pleasant. That's why Dewey went to the center of the village as soon as the watchful eyes were gone and witnessed Minato arguing with Hiruzen about what Konoha planned to do, right in front of the Hokage's building. Dewey was shocked when Minato accused the Hokage of having tried to kill him in an ambush plan with Danzu. He never imagined the village would act that way against one of its own, even more so a war hero, much less with the mastermind being the Hokage himself, who even admitted to being behind it. Dewey then realized that not everything was as bright as he thought, and that the village was much darker than he had once believed. Dewey believed Minato without hesitation. Even without initial proof, he trusted that Minato was an honest man who fought for what was right. He had faith that things could still be set right. Dewey would never doubt Minato, and, certainly, it was a shock to see, that same morning, some ANBU ninjas coming to him asking questions about Minato, since they were known to be close. He was even more surprised when he heard from them that Minato had left the village. He went to train with his son right after that, but his mind remained stuck on all the events in the village. He was saddened that Konoha had not chosen to help the Uzumakis, as he too supported aiding them. Dewey himself had met many of them at the northern border, where he fought alongside the red-haired allies, and it was thanks to them that they managed to reverse situations of extreme danger when Minato wasn't there. It would be unfair to abandon the Uzumakis when they needed help the most. For Dewey, that was cowardice, but unfortunately, it had been the decision of the village and its majority, and there was nothing he could do, even as an elite jonin of the village now. His son soon noticed the distraction. While Guy trained that morning, he noticed that his father wasn't shouting or motivating him as usual. Dewey kept his head down, silent and in low spirits. He had called him earlier, but Dewey didn't even seem to hear, which should have been impossible, making him raise his voice. "Father, what happened?" his son asked, shouting in worry. Dewey finally looked at Guy with a bit of hesitation, but he couldn't hide the truth from him. "It's about Minato. Guy. He left the village to help the Uzumakis," he revealed. The boy was stunned, his mouth falling open and his eyes widening. "You said he left the village? Like, he deserted the village?" he asked, realizing from his father's tone that it didn't sound like an official mission. "Yes, Guy. Minato has become a rogue ninja," he answered, his voice divided, hesitant. "We'll never see him again?" Guy shouted, stunned, as tears immediately streamed down his face when he realized what his father meant, realizing he would never see Minato again.
I hope so, son. I hope so. I still don't really understand what's happening, said Due, tired. Then he added, I'll go to the Senju clan to talk with Lord Nawaki.
I'm sure he can tell me exactly what happened.
I'm going there. If you want to keep training, you can stay. Can't I go with you, father? I'd like to see Miss Kushina, asked Guy, still crying. Kushina also left the village with Minato.
Due replied, while his son grew even more stunned, crying harder. Guy stayed silent for a while, remembering how he and his mother had stayed at the Senju clan for many months, and Mito and Kushina had always taken care of them when they were there. It was obvious they had a strong bond with the latter. Let's go to the clan, son. I think Nawaki will give us all the answers, but at least we'll better understand what happened. Due said in the end, while Guy, still in tears, followed him in silence.
There were ANBU ninjas around the clan, but they entered without any problem. They found Nawaki talking with some before finally turning to them.
I see you finally arrived, he said with a sigh. He didn't seem very happy, but not sad either, just tired.
Lord Nawaki. Minato is gone.
We'll never see him again, the first to shout was Guy, crying beside his father. Nawaki only gave a sad smile to the son of the man who had become his sensei in a way. After all, Nawaki had learned to open the gates thanks to him.
Don't be so desperate. Minato will soon return to the village, he said. Are you sure, Lord Nawaki? Guy widened his eyes, stunned. Of course. Minato only went to protect the Uzumakis. There's no doubt the village will welcome him with open arms as soon as everything is all right. Nawaki replied confidently. If you say so, then I feel relieved. Due murmured. Well, in any case, come. I want to give you a scroll. Minato asked me to pass it on to you when I found you. After all, he needed to say goodbye somehow.
At the same time, he had to be discreet.
Nawaki said in the end. Chapter 299 Village Situation 03. Third Person POV. Konoha, Year 42. A scroll?
Due looked surprised. It's actually a letter, but there's something for you there. That's what Minato told me when he placed the letters in my hand.
Nawaki said, while moving forward along the clan. Now, come with me.
Nawaki requested, while the father and son duo followed him, not entering through the main door of the house where he and his sister lived. They entered through the side, finding a little boy in lotus position, concentrated, sitting on the floor, training, while Tsunade stared at him the whole time at his side, supervising his training. Her gaze shifted to the newcomers, seeing Guy and his father Due. The little boy opened his eyes as he felt their presence approaching and completely lost his concentration as he stared at the newcomers. Before a fist came down toward him from above, startling him. Why did you hit me? Shouted the boy, no more than 9 years old. You have to pay attention to your training, brat. Focus first. Use your chakra to release it. Tsunade spoke in a scolding tone, making the little boy shrink back and nod. Nawaki just shook his head at his sister being harsh with the child, while Guy seemed more cheerful at seeing someone his own age there. Who is this boy? Is he training with Miss Tsunade? Guy shouted excitedly, seeing the boy training, even if it wasn't physical training. This is Yamato, he came to the clan a day ago. Tsunade has become his legal guardian now. And my sister is supervising his training. Nawaki explained, while Guy ran up to the boy. Before he got close, he also received a knock on the head from Tsunade. Don't disturb the training, she said in an angry tone, while Guy touched his forehead with a small bump forming after the blow, trying not to cry. Tsunade is scary, he murmured, while the red mark stood out on his forehead. What did you dare say about me, boy? Tsunade scolded, ready to hit him again, while Yamato tried to behave without opening his eyes even if the world was ending, all to avoid irritating Tsunade again. Well, let's leave my sister training young Yamato. I'm sure you can become friends later. Now come. Nawaki said,
asking the two to follow him again. He entered the clan through a side door and picked up some letters, handing one to Due. Was this done by Minato? Due asked, carefully taking the letter. Yes, Minato left this for you and a few others. Nawaki replied, while Due nodded and opened the letter right there, with his very curious son at his side. He sat on the edge of the house and Guy joined him. As soon as he opened it, Minato's words were there. I know this is unexpected, Due, and I know I may be seen as a traitor within this village, but I don't care about that. This is my choice and I decided to save the Uzumakis, with or without the village. Anyway, I hope you are not disappointed with me for my somewhat reckless attitude, but this is my choice and I would like you to respect it. Anyway, now I am no longer in the village, which means Konoha has weakened a little, but still it does not lose to any other village. There are still shinobi like you, Due, one of the most powerful ninjas today. I just wanted to say that you were a great friend, someone I met when I was still just a young boy being mocked, training alone in that vacant lot, back in academy days. I knew you had great potential from the start and that you would shut the mouths of everyone who mocked you as an eternal genin. And seeing you become the powerful ninja who can use the 8 gates, to the point of having the respect of the entire village, is something I greatly admire. I know this is all your merit, but it still fills me with pride to see your evolution, to see how strong you were becoming. Back at the northern border, when you began to open the first gates, that was already a path of no return for you. I am sure you will protect the village in my absence, regardless of what consequences this battle brings to Konoha. At the same time, I will not stand still. I also know that things will be complicated for me regarding the village, but I would never let it reach the brink of destruction. When that happens, I will be back. Now I must leave the village in your hands and in the hands of others I trust. Please, protect Konoha, fight for your comrades. Remember, Konoha is just a name. What truly makes it what it is not the name, nor the land where Konoha stands, but the people. That is the most important thing. Help protect them, Due. You can do it. Here are some techniques that may help improve your body and taijutsu. I don't think you will be able to perform them the way I do, but they can clearly help you develop something similar or close to my techniques. These are the 6 styles of the Navy, as I call them. Don't ask what Navy is. Always have the power of youth, Due. With confidence, your friend, Minato. Due finished the letter and began to cry. You never mocked me, Minato. Even back then, you were always there training with me without judging my reputation and you helped me a lot in developing the 8 gates. If it weren't for you, I would still be training to develop them as an invisible genin in the village. You also saved my wife and helped welcome my son. You will always be a good friend, Minato. Due began to cry as he answered the letter at the same time. At the end of the message there was a seal. Due stopped crying and took a breath. He thought for a moment before applying a little chakra. Minato usually made seals that required nothing more than chakra to be activated when it was for Due, and even though Due was not proficient in jutsus, that did not mean he did not know how to manipulate chakra. After all, the very use of the gates was the uncontrolled manifestation of chakra in his body. As soon as he touched it, the seal exploded, revealing a scroll. Due quickly grabbed it before it fell to the ground. He looked at the scroll curiously. What is that, father? Guy asked beside him. A scroll of techniques. Minato left this for me to train. Due said, surprised. Nawaki, who was nearby, looked on curiously. Why did he leave techniques for you? Nawaki asked. Due pressed his lips together before replying, so that I can protect the village. That was all he said. Nawaki bid them farewell after that, since he still had other letters to deliver to people Minato had asked him to. Hey, you! Guy saw Yamato finally resting from training and approached him. Nawaki passed by them at that moment. Hi. Yamato said in a shy tone. I'm Guy. So you're training with Tsunade? You must be really powerful. You know, at my age I only have one rival. I believe you'll be one too. The boy said excitedly, approaching Yamato,
who was a little bewildered by the approach of that green-dressed boy with funny hair and eyebrows.
But soon Yamato's expression was filled with embarrassment. "I'm not that good," he said.
He could barely manipulate chakra properly, he hadn't even released it yet.
He wasn't like the academy boys.
"Hey, don't be silly. If you're receiving training from Lady Tsunade, it means you're really strong," Guy said in his youthful innocence.
"Just don't give up. That's the secret, understand?"
"So, have you ever heard of the power of youth?"
he continued, seeing Yamato shrink a little upon hearing that.
Nawaki had already left the clan at that moment and advanced to one of the corners of the village, arriving at the orphanage. As he passed by the children playing, he called for the headmistress.
"Are you a member of the Senju clan?"
The woman said when she saw him, immediately placing her hands on both his shoulders with a conflicted look. She seemed to have been crying, as Nawaki noticed.
"Tell me, did Minato really leave the village?"
she asked, knowing very well of his connection with the Senju, since she had also seen Minato with this man a few times.
"I must say yes," Nawaki replied.
The woman seemed on the verge of tears again. She hadn't believed it when she heard from the very ninjas she had raised in the orphanage and who today were Chunin and Jounin, who came earlier to warn her of what had happened, knowing of her connection with Minato.
The first thing Garit did was cry. She hadn't even said goodbye.
Minato had simply left the village. After everything he had done.
But she soon also understood that things weren't that simple.
It was easy to realize that Minato had left Konoha to protect the clan the village itself had refused to protect.
He would do what Konoha hadn't done. "Madam Garit, I know Minato didn't say goodbye, but he couldn't do anything. He couldn't draw too much attention.
So he gave me some letters, for me to place them in the right hands.
This one is for you,"
he said, handing her one of the letters.
"Thank you for this, Lord Senju,"
the woman said, taking it immediately. In the end, she went into her room while Nawaki left the orphanage. She had a simple room, but filled with photos of groups of children she had raised. In one of them was a young Minato with other children from that time. It was there that she cast her gaze, sighed, sat on the bed, and opened the letter, beginning to read it.
"I apologize for leaving like this. I should have said goodbye to you, I know.
But it was better for me to leave as soon as possible and leave only a message.
Do not think that I will be gone forever. I need to protect the Uzumaki clan, even if everyone says otherwise. I still want to do that. That is why I left. Becoming a rogue ninja was not what I had planned. But it was necessary. I just want to say that I will never forget you, no matter what happens. And you, mother. If I may say so, since you were the closest woman I ever had to one, I will always consider you as such. I just want to thank you for everything you did for me.
Your advice, your encouragement, and even your scoldings were gifts in my first years at the academy, until I managed to move to the apartment in the village. However, I always saw you as this woman, this motherly figure. I just wanted to say that I am sorry, but I will never forget you, mother, nor all the other children or important people to me in the village. Regardless of what happens, this will not be the last time we meet. The village is in good hands, and for me that is enough. As long as I protect those who are out there, beyond the village gates, there will be those who protect the people inside. You and everyone will be safe. But I want you to know that I love you, mother."
Madame Garit could not stop the tears from wetting the letter. "Minato, you idiot, my little one. I will scold you as soon as I see you again," she said amid her crying.
Nawaki, in turn, had arrived at a bar in the village, where a group of people was gathered. He approached, drawing their attention, and they all raised their eyebrows, wondering what the leader of the Senju was doing there.
Nawaki simply placed a letter on the table. "It's from Minato." That was all he said. Everyone opened their eyes in surprise.
This group was none other than the legendary Ghost Squad, those who had survived the Second World War. There had been no further casualties since then, but the group was quite reduced. They had gathered precisely to discuss Minato, not only surprised by what he had done in recent days, but also remembering when some of their own comrades had attacked him, trying to kill him in the Land of Wind at the orders of the Hokage and the elders. Now, upon hearing that he had deserted the village to join the Uzumakis in their fight, they were even more astonished. Alpha approached the letter and, carefully, began to open it to read it to the others.
Nawaki had already left the place, returning to the clan. Chapter 300 Planning the Clan's Defense. Third-person POV. Uzushiogakure, Year 42. The meeting had lasted for hours between the elders, the Uzumaki clan leaders, and Minato's group. While the village was acting quickly over Minato's escape and the village's most powerful weapon being almost 1,000 kilometers away, everyone there was still gathered in the clan leader's house. Then we must further strengthen the seals around the line, according to what Miss Kushina Uzumaki and Miss Tsuna Senju can do with the training they received from Mito. But we already have our defenses so strong, since the island's defenses were set up long before Mito was born, by the greatest Fuinjutsu masters that ever existed, said one of the elders, not seeing much use in trying to reinforce the Fuinjutsus when this matter came up. Minato suggested, but they didn't want to tamper with the seal lines, it would be complicated and without guarantee. Everyone agreed with the elder's words there. Minato looked at them all. He would even agree with the man, if it were the only option. We may not tamper with the existing seals, but can we build new layers of seals on top of the ones that already exist? Adding more layers will help protect the clan better, making the defense even thicker. Minato said. You want to place a new layer of Fuinjutsu around the entire island? Do you know how much chakra you would need for that? Even with the entire clan, it would take a week to raise a new one around the island, said one of the elders. I know very well, lucky for us we have a chakra bomb with us, Minato said, looking at Kushina. Of course, you can count on me, Databane. As soon as he said that, Kushina immediately nodded to Minato's request, understanding what he meant by that. I understand, well, she does have chakra for that, hundreds of times greater than the whole clan combined. But it would still be a somewhat difficult task to circle the entire island, commented another elder. Don't worry about that. Kushina is an expert in making shadow clones. I'm sure she can create 2 or more layers in just one day, Minato said. If that is really true, then it would be beneficial to build layers on top of the existing ones, commented the elder with a satisfied look. Not only can we do that, Minato continued, but we also brought from Konoha some more plans, and this involves all Uzumakis also using water jutsus. Tsuna brought some scrolls made by Tobarama, of A and S rank jutsus. We can use the great amount of chakra we have to launch offensive and combine jutsus. I'm sure that, with some practice, they can learn to launch attacks together. Do you think the clan can learn this in a few days? He asked the leader. If it's water usage, it's quite likely that most will learn easily. We are specialized in this element, so it's natural that we are good at it. But first I need to see the jutsus to get an idea, he said, adding at the end, while Minato looked at the blonde, who nodded, taking the 2 scrolls and tossing them to the leader, who quickly analyzed them. Well, a jutsu of this rank is not something easy to learn, he said, looking at the scroll carefully. But it's certainly not something impossible. If part of the clan learns this, we can be offensive, said the leader. Together, we can cause great damage to the enemy's military plans, since they would be at the mercy of the sea. He continued, looking from the scroll to Minato. After all, that was something very valuable. These jutsus were created directly by the second Hokage and left as a treasure of the Senju clan, and now they would be using them to protect the clan. Great! If we have a base of Uzumakis to be able to launch these jutsus, we can weaken the enemy's attack, Minato stated. Just as I would also like to use the rest of the clan who master the wind element, those who are already trained. With some practice, they can learn to launch chakra arrows of this element with Hanabi. It will be another powerful offensive for us to use against our enemies with long-range attacks. Well, the wind element is a bit rare among the Uzumakis, but we can gather a group to train.
Still, among those who have enough power to launch these water and wind jutsus, we will prefer to use Suetun," said the leader.
"All right," Minato stated. "We can also set traps with explosive tags. We have a large stock here. We can require the clan to produce them in mass. After all, not everyone will be able to help with the jutsus." Mu was the one who spoke this time and suggested, looking at the leader. "Yes, we can use that to our advantage," Masaki affirmed.
"Well, if you want explosive tags, I had a few shops in Konoha and I cleared out all the stock before starting to act against the Hokage. I have an immense amount of explosive tags with me, at least almost 5 million of them,"
said Minato, while the leader raised an eyebrow. "You intend to use all that?"
"Yes. We can place traps around the island, in addition to the layers that Kushina will be able to build around the village. This will be the clan's first offensive and surely we won't have to spare, after all we will be facing 4 entire armies."
"Well, if you are willing to spend that in the name of the Uzumaki clan, I am more grateful than ever, Minato Namikaze,"
said the leader, looking at the elders. "You were mocking until yesterday, saying that only a group of 5 people came to help the clan and that none of this would make a difference."
"Well, I am seeing a difference."
No one said anything else or tried to contest the leader's words.
"I also need to do special training with Kushina and Makoto.
I will have to leave the clan a few times to do their training somewhere else,"
Minato explained. "All right. We just have to keep an eye on when our enemy will arrive.
As long as I'm in the clan, I can see them long before they arrive.
I am the one who has the greatest sensing ability in the ninja world," said Minato firmly. "That's a bit arrogant." "Are you saying you are better than us, boy?" said one of the old men. "I can see kilometers away.
I can see beyond the protection barrier."
"I doubt anyone else can do that,"
Minato replied, looking as if he were challenging someone to say the same thing in that room.
No one said anything else.
They just watched, trusting his words. "Anyway, I also have some plans, both to find our enemy and to contain him, in case he gets too close. But for that, I'll have to be away for a while, maybe a few hours. I also have a way out to save the clan if the battle is lost, which will not happen, but I have an escape plan,"
Minato said firmly. "You're saying you can use that jutsu from the second Hokage on all of us? How would you move all the members of the clan here?"
One of the elders seemed stunned and raised his voice more than he intended, while all heads turned to Minato, surprised.
Guessing that his final plan would be to carry all 5,000 Uzumakis, but they were wrong. "I cannot move the entire clan.
Not only am I not connected to all the ninjas here, nor do I have enough chakra to move thousands of people at the same time,"
Minato replied, not hiding his limitation.
He did not have Kurama's chakra, as Kushina could have, nor could he mark everyone with his chakra, as Naruto had demonstrated during the war to combine with Minato's jutsu to save the ninja alliance from Obito and Jubi's attack.
"But there are other ways to help you if we need to escape," Minato said with confidence.
Obviously, he had as many plans to fight the enemies as he did escape plans, if necessary, to save as many Uzumakis as possible.
And one thing was certain.
The clan would not cease to exist in this era, not while Minato was there. "If you have so much confidence, then we will trust your words, Minato Namikaze,"
Masaki said.
"I will also do some personal training and seek resources."
"But now you have to speak to the clan. They don't even know yet about the danger that is coming," Minato said, while all the Uzumakis present seemed ashamed.
They were keeping the people calm with speeches of safety, hiding the seriousness of the situation so as not to spread panic. But there was no way to continue like that. They needed to prepare everyone for the worst, even if it meant saying that, if they failed, entire families would be wiped out.
"All right. Let's begin then. Gather all the members of the clan. Tell the entire clan to be present in front of my house,"
said the leader, and immediately some nobles began to leave to summon everyone. The Uzumaki clan would gather shortly after, while Minato and the girls left the meeting and waited outside the mansion.
"What is this containment plan you intend to execute?" Suna asked curiously, since Minato hadn't said anything about it yet. Maybe.
I intend to make the island fly so high that not even the third Tsuchikage will be able to reach it with his flying jutsus. Minato said calmly, while Kushina's eyes lit up, understanding very well what he meant.
That's genius, Minato. If you can move the island. She exclaimed, since she had seen something similar on Mount Mayaboku. Yes, but first we must fight the nations. Otherwise, we will have no peace. We cannot simply run away and let them reorganize.
We need to fight them, face them as much as we can.
Because, as things are now, they would be a threat to Konoha.
Even more so when there is no yellow flash of Konoha to change the course of the war.
Minato believed Konoha would be in good hands, but the price would be quite heavy as well, given that he was certain the Third War was inevitable, with or without the Uzumakis. Minato's plan was to weaken all the villages in this fight. As soon as they had caused enough damage, they could escape peacefully and the other four nations would no longer be a threat to Konoha. Even now, Minato's thoughts were turned toward his own village and its safety. They waited until all the clan members, shinobi and villagers, began to gather at the entrance. Within the clan, it took about 20 minutes, since the message was urgent. Everyone stopped what they were doing at that moment to see what was so important that it would be addressed to everyone by the leader and all the elders. The leader himself, Masaki, Elder Mu, along with his other advisors, stood on top of the gate looking at the crowd finally gathered. Children, housewives, shinobi, and some male Uzumakis who were not proficient in ninja arts and had become farmers in the field, were all there. Hello, everyone of the clan. I am gathering you here because we are on the brink of destruction. He said simply, staring at all those red-haired members gathered before him. For a few seconds, everyone seemed not to believe what they had just heard from their leader. The silence was heavy. Now it was war. A fight against extinction. That wraps up this part of What If Transmigrated as Minato Namikaze. Thanks so much for listening. As always, new parts drop every 4 days, so be sure to stay tuned. Also check out my Patreon channel for early releases of all the series, where you can find all the series released one day ahead of YouTube. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, share it with your friends, and please consider supporting the original author as well. See you in the next one.